Alright, so today we're going to be looking at Google Earth, and you can see on my monitor right now um, a map of part of Europe, North Africa, and part of the Middle East. Today we're just going to take a look at Turkey, look at some of the major cities in Turkey, maybe talk a little bit about the history, but that's the general idea. So up in the north towards Europe, you can see the city of Istanbul. Now, Istanbul is probably the most important city in Turkey. It has, about 15 to 20 million people living in it, and by far it's the most important city within Turkey, right? But it was also the capital of both the Ottoman Empire, I believe, after Mehmet the First, but don't quote me on that. Um, and before that, it was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, or the eastern half of the Roman Empire under the name of Constantinople, right? But yeah, some of its major landmarks consists of the Hagia Sophia Museum, right? And after the Turks took over Constantinople, renamed it Istanbul, one of the things they did was they turned the Hagia Sophia, which was a basilica, right, a religious center, into a museum, right? And then you also have the famous Blue Mosque. Now, the Blue Mosque is kind of this big, very kind of elaborate architectural entity, right? You can kind of see this in this image on my screen. See a lot of tourists. The interior is also very beautiful, right? And then you have, Bosporus, which is a sea, or a beach, I should say, popular in Turkey, or popular within Istanbul. I mean, there are so many beaches in Turkey because, of course, Turkey is a peninsula. It's surrounded on three sides by water, right? hmm hmm And so, okay, down here we have Izmir. Izmir is known for its seafood. Um, it's known for having very good beaches. I've heard from people in Turkey that Izmir is very popular with European tourists. A lot of Britons like to visit Izmir, and a lot of Russians, and I believe the summer like to visit Izmir as well. hmm it's a lot warmer climate than Russia, of course, right? hmm And it's, I believe, on the Aegean Sea. hmm hmm Now, I'm not as familiar with the landmarks of Izmir, but it looks like it has many interesting landmarks. And you can see some of the roads, some of the other cities, right? Zoom out, see all the various cities within. If we go up here, over to this corner, you can see the city of Trabzon, and I believe in Trabzon, most of the tea consumed in Turkey is grown, right? hmm hmm And then you have Ankara, which, after the creation of the state of Turkey in, I believe, 1924, the capital was moved from Istanbul to Ankara, I believe in part to kind of distance itself from its Turkish or its Ottoman past, right? And I think also a lot of the administration was already there, right? Mm-hmm. And in talking about breaking with the country's Ottoman and Muslim past, I think it's important to talk a little bit about the founding of Turkey and some of the policies that were implemented kind of throughout the history of Turkey that illustrate this idea, right? So Turkey was founded as a secular republic that was modeled, more on, say, the French notion of a republic than, say, on the American notion of republic, of the republic, right? And so one of the core principles of the most prominent founder of Turkey, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, is that of basically laicité, right? The Turkish adaptation of the French concept of secularism, right? And so, just as you have had in France, you've had kind of conflicts over public displays of outward religiousness, right? The best example is probably a headscarf. Now, most people in the U.S. have probably seen Muslim women with headscarves on, especially if you live in a major city. But throughout much of its history, that's been a kind of controversial piece of Turkish history, because Turkey was founded as a very kind of aggressively secular country, as I read its history, right? And I believe in the past, women wouldn't be allowed to, say, wear their headscarves in public places, right? And then the second point about breaking with the Ottoman past was the language reform, right? So prior to the language reforms, which I believe were in the late 20s or the early 30s, Turkish was written using a script that was derived from the Arabic script, right? And Turkey, after that, adopted a policy in which they adopted the Italic script, the Latin script. If you are an English speaker or you're familiar with Spanish or German, that's the script that all the major Western European languages use, right? And English, of course, right? And I think that was designed in part to kind of break with Turkey's past, rooted in Islam and maybe other countries in the Middle East, in a reorientation of Turkey toward Europe, right? And during the formation of Turkey, there was a strong identification with the founders of Turkey and the sorry, I forgot. I forgot my train of thought. All right, so So, yeah, that's Ankara. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah, let's look over here. Oh, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan. Mm-hmm. Oh, it looks like up here is probably Russia. No, maybe. Hmm. Oh, I thought that was a brain fart. Mm-hmm. Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Russia. Okay, I got distracted. We were talking about Turkey. Right. And then over here you can see that Turkey is on the Syrian border, which I think is important because the Turkish military had military operations to recapture, I believe, the city of Mosul, which they believed was being held. No, not the city of Mosul. No, 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 no. It wasn't Mosul. Mm-hmm. All right, so if anybody actually watches this, this is kind of a rough demo of a vlog series that I'd like to do, basically exploring geography with Google Earth. As you can see, I've made a lot of mistakes and slip-ups. I didn't really prepare for this at all, and I think in the future I probably should prepare a bit more, right? But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Um, and it would probably help if I had somebody I was talking to while I was doing these, more of a dialogue about this stuff. But